Hello, good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, or good whatever time of night or day it happens to be, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to Republic News. I'm your hostess, Liviana. This particular episode of Republic News, I will be joined by my boyfriend, known variously as Lunar 5, Lord Flappy Hat, and Pepper. We will be discussing primarily the platform policies of Andrew Yang, a candidate for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States. As our discussion of the platform policies of this fellow is rather extensive, although not exhaustive, I will be dividing this episode of Republic News into 2 or 3, maybe even 4 separate videos, so as not to overwhelm you. The final recorded version of our initial discussion was a little over 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I'm thinking once I have completed the edit of the entire stream, it may be 3 videos of approximately 50 minutes each, 50 as in 50. So I will return, or I will be back with my boyfriend after the intro. And so we have come to the 3rd episode of Dang Yang and his gang. This may be the final episode, depending on whether or not I think the remainder is short enough for me to insert a bit of discussion of one of the policies we did not actually address in the original recording. And if not, then then there will be a 4th episode. If so, then this will be the final episode. I will be back with my boyfriend in just a moment.
Let's see, the next one. Support the revival of earmarks. Earmarks have received a bad name in American politics. However, many experts believe that killing off the practice of earmarks have drastically increased the difficulty of getting legislation passed. In reality, our representatives in both House and Senate are there to represent and serve the local constituencies. Those who have constituents that are more affected by a given piece of legislation are often faced with a binary yes-no decision. Earmarks are now another level of negotiation in the governing process. Those representatives can generate revenue for their area that might offset the negative impacts their constituents would face in an otherwise socially desirable piece of legislation. Yeah, I remember this one being one hell of a debate topic in Congress during the... God, was it Bush's first or second term? I'm trying to remember. I want to say late first, early second term. And I'm going to be honest, I'm happy earmarks are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just in... Because they wouldn't just be in... socially desirable pieces of legislation that will negatively impact the senators or the representatives' constituents. They would literally be in every single bill. And it wouldn't just be one earmark. It would be multiple earmarks, because everyone who wrote the bill would put in their earmarks.
Yeah, I think another term for this... I think another term for this is pork, right?
Yeah. I remember that term. Pork spending, earmarks, cut the fat, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we wrote this bill, and then we're going to set it, and then you can't use this money because we're already going to use it for something else.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. It was nutty. I'm going to be honest, I'm glad it's gone. You want to say, oh, it's more difficult to get legislation. Good. That's the point. That's the whole point of the system, is to move slow so the states are more reactive to the needs of the people. Next one. Make it easier to save for retirement.
Okay.
This one was a fun one. Most Americans want to do more to save for retirement, but they don't know how. It's always easier to say, I'll start tomorrow, when the expenses of today crop up. The government should help people who want to do more to prepare for their future. There should be an opt-in retirement accounts that have defined contributions that automatically increase with people's incomes. By opting in, an individual could define a portion of their income to be dedicated to this tax-free account. And as their income increases, or at regular intervals, the amount could automatically be increased. If this sounds like a 401k or a Roth IRA, it basically is, minus the tax.
Well, I mean,
basically, he wants to set up a federally run 1K/Roth IRA.
Yeah, this is another one of his schemes to get rid of Social Security and that sort of thing. They want to privatize it to some extent and then have you dump your money into a government savings program, which is what Social Security was billed as being.
And then the money you dumped into the program will be subsequently given to Wall Street to put on the stock market, which is, as we all know, the 100% safest place to put your retirement money.
Well, yeah, and I mean, he talks about how people want to save money and they don't know how and blah, blah, blah. It's often the case that they don't have leftover disposable cash to put into savings. This is why so many people, I can't remember the exact figure, but Jimmy Dore talks about it fairly often. A certain percentage of Americans, I think it's like 40%, don't have enough money in savings to cover a $1,000 emergency. And so
it's over half of Americans make $30,000. Over 60% can't afford a $500 emergency. It's not $1,000, it's not $600, it's $500. And this isn't just talking medical bills, we're talking like some kind of unexpected expense that cropped up, like, hey, maybe something's wrong with your car, and expenses ran up just a little bit higher than you thought.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something's wrong with the piping or the electricity of your house. And then when you're running, and when you have that little money, it doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter about your benefits or what have you. Hell, you probably don't even have any.
So there's someone in the external chat now talking.
Yay!
Says, I think your plants are dying, and I say they're alien plants. And he says, alien plants that need water. Who's the whore on the couch? I said, my character and her wife from Star Trek Online. He says, so you got a space hooker? LOL, yes. You really need to learn how to talk to your guest while you type.
Well, I can't see the chat, so yeah.
Yeah. The redhead is my character's wife, who's played by my boyfriend here in the stream talking, and the one with black hair is my character.
Modernized military spending. Sounds great. Turns out to be crap.
Of course.
Our soldiers are our bravest Americans. They compromise the finest fighting force on the planet. They are not being put in a position to succeed, either at home or abroad. Many soldiers are returning home with injuries or aren't receiving the right support or opportunity. Yeah, that's because we keep screwing them over. It's a time-honored tradition for all humans. Everywhere. Screw over the people who fought for your country. What could go wrong? We invest more money and resources in treating our soldiers. We need to invest more money and resources in treating our soldiers with the care that they deserve. Nothing wrong there. 100% agree. Today, loose nuclear material, cyber terrorism, fake news, and other unconventional attacks pose a grave threat to America. And these are less impacted by manpower and equipment on military bases. Money and resources should be redirected to places where it can do the most to protect us from actual threats we're facing today. We can buy up nuclear material. Cyber terrorism is actually pretty easy to defend. If you want to protect the military portion, then cyber terrorism is pretty easy to defend against if that's what you're worried about. All you have to do is make sure that your, let's just call it the military internet, for lack of a better term, is separate from your civilian internet, and make sure there's no connection point between the two, because if there is, then anyone and anything can get in there. As for fake news, aka misinformation, that's just a part of daily life. It's always been there, always has, always will. You can't fight it. You can try, but you can't.
This is one of the things that bugs me so much about the so-called conservatives who are always support our troops. Well, if the money that's being wasted on Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and so forth were actually supporting our troops, it would be one thing. But you recall in the Iraq War, there were people who were having like GoFundMes and stuff in order to pay for gas masks and body armor for our troops. Instead of the government, supplying those things for them, the citizens had to buy them.
I remember a ton of troops, after serving their 2 years active, were about to go inactive, only to find out that they had somehow, without their knowledge, re-enlisted in active duty. I remember that being a scandal. And then after they served 4 years active, decided, I'm getting the hell out of here, this sucks, found themselves re-enlisted for another 4. Again, without their knowledge and without their consent.
Yep.
Remember, support our troops, boys. Oh, right, and another thing for against cyber terrorism, they cannot. How's that Starship Troopers quote go again? As for cyber terrorism, I remember there was this not giant one. There was a worm that I believe it was the NSA created. It was either the NSA or the CIA, one of the two. It was basically looking for. It was a common electrical device. Basically, it would shut down one of Iran's nuclear facilities. It was all kinds of wonderful.
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? Have a meltdown.
So yeah, if there is a giant cyber war, America started it. Or at least we were the first to pioneer, shall we say. We were the first to pioneer it.
I mean, under the Joint Intelligence Assessment Report of December 2016 talks about the Grizzly Steppe virus and all that shit, spyware. And as it happens, the IT experts who looked into this found that Grizzly Steppe was not Russian, but Ukrainian. That there was something put into the code to make it look like it was Russian, like Cyrillic letters with a Russian name. Why would they do that? If the KGB or GRU, whatever they are now, if they're so competent and able to do all these things they were accused of doing, why would they leave a trace that could be, point back to them? And then it turns out a few months later, WikiLeaks releases the Vault 7 leaks, and we find out that the NSA has programs that can fake digital signatures and IP addresses and so forth to make it look like something came from some other place, when in reality it came from the NSA.
Right, that was the quote I was looking for. And it fits so well with the whole cyber terrorism thing. The enemy cannot press a button if he have disabled his hand.
Mm.
That was after Sergeant Zim had just thrown a knife through Ace Levy's hand. What do I mean by this? Easy. You find cyber terrorists, you either convert them to your side, or you kill them. You find a nation, they're at war with another nation, they're committing cyber warfare, you find out where the hackers are coming from, and you kill them. I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter how many cyber terrorists or whatever you have, doesn't matter how many of those guys you have, if I have guys with guns, and they can kill you. Honestly, this whole cyber warfare thing really strikes me similar to when the Air Forces, it's like when the Air Corps became the Air Force, people were like, yeah, we aren't really going to need to use an army anymore because, we'll just have planes bombing them, what's the point? Yeah, turns out, you can bomb the ever-living hell out of an area. You're still going to need troops to hold the land. In other words, you can do all the hacking you want. But if you kill all the hackers, you can't do no more hacking. It's straightforward. This one I did not like. Make it easy for Americans to move for work. What could go wrong? Americans live in areas where there are few available jobs. However, they also don't have the means to move to an area with better job prospects, and frequently, professional licenses don't travel to different localities or states. In order to help people move to areas with more jobs, the federal government should subsidize moving costs of Americans who are relocating for work. It should also work with state license boards to increase the mobility of individual licenses. Basically, if you have a piss-poor job, just move.
Yeah, why don't they just bring the jobs here, though? That's the thing.
Plus, this only really helps with white-collar jobs. Because, again, if you can't afford to save for your retirement, then chances are you can't afford to save to go to college, and you can't afford to move to work even with the American government subsidizing it. And chances are, even if you do find work, it's going to be piss poor, low paying, and you're going to have to live on the outskirts of town. So you moved across the nation for nothing. Isn't it wonderful?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right, and you, again, slowly killed your local economy. Because that's one less person buying stuff.
Mm-hmm. So instead of doing anything to help these economically depressed areas, you're doing something to hurt them.
Mm-hmm. You're not only hurting yourself, you're hurting the people you leave behind.
Yep. All right,
What's the famous talking point about why we shouldn't have open borders or why we shouldn't take refugees? They should stay there and help their nation become better or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, these people, guess what? Stay in your state and make it better.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
And considering we may actually need to have real IDs, so, a passport to travel in between the states and the U.S. soon. Yeah, think about that one.
A passport to travel in the U.S.? What?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was hyperbole or what. I'll have to look into it. But that is essentially what it is. When, the whole U.S. is built upon the notion of freedom of movement and all that. Freedom of trade and all that.
Yeah. Our guest says that the best way to create jobs is to nuke India. Hey, I don't think that's going to work out.
Well, it would relocate a whole bunch of call centers back to the U.S.
Yeah. But, they could always hire people in the U.S. even now. It's not like they have to nuke some place to do that. And it's one of the issues with neoliberalism. One of the principal tenets of neoliberalism, which you've heard me say before, is the surfaces of the world economy are movable. And in plain English, that means, sure, it's okay to move your factory overseas or to a third world country in this hemisphere or whatever and turn it into a sweatshop. Because profit is success and success is life. And nothing matters except profit. It's a very short-sighted...
Capitalism, baby.
It's a very short-sighted plan, though, because what happens if the people in this country don't have the money to buy your goods and services? Well, you stop selling them, and you go bankrupt, and you go out of business. Dun dun dun! See, capitalism eats itself.
And then we decide to let the corporations rule all over us. Like in Ayn Rand's idiotic novels.
Yeah.
This one. Ease the transition to self-driving vehicle. I'd just like to point out right now that there are, I think it was Google's self-driving vehicles. Some people in oh god damn it. I know it was in Arizona. One of Arizona towns, people started attacking self-driving vehicles. Actively destroying them and damaging them. Turns out people don't like them. Alright, he's basically saying, this is how 3 million Americans are truck drivers, 7 million are employed related to trucking activity, and more self-driving trucks means we're going to let 3 million truck drivers go. Anyway, but here's the problem with self-driving vehicles right now, is they only work in ideal conditions. This means nice, calm, sunny days.
Well, one of the things that I've been wondering is if this guy's so intent on doing automated transportation, like trucking and whatnot, why not just rebuild our railroad infrastructure and expand it? Because this is part of the infrastructure of our nation, which was never completed. There are highways. I pointed this out somewhere recently. I don't remember exactly where. But say, if you go into the Ouachitas and Ozarks in Oklahoma, eastern Oklahoma, and western Arkansas, if you get in Oklahoma, there are places there where you have to drive 50 or 100 miles out of your way and then hit another intersection to go to another highway further up and then come back, because the vast majority of the interstates and U.S. highways and even the state highways in eastern Oklahoma move east and west and not so much north and south. There's one that goes north and south, and then there's the toll, the Tulsa Turnpike or whatever it's called. If you go into western Arkansas, the vast majority of those highways go north and south and not so much east and west. You can find the highways that go east and west, but they're one lane on each side, undivided, no shoulder, very narrow, up and down and around all over the mountains. And I mean, these things could have been improved, expanded. The more highways could have been built, but no, they just decided to stop funding those projects. Plus, the ones that do exist are in serious state of needing repairs. There are places where even the yellow and white lines on the highways need to be repainted and stuff, and they're not doing it because they're wasting money on other stuff like wars for profit. But so the railroads were part of the national infrastructure, which were never completed. And not only were they never completed, but some of them have been dismantled now, so that, for example, the passenger trains, Amtrak, have to share railways with commercial trains. So if the commercial train is coming through, the Amtrak train has to pull over to a side rail and wait for the commercial train to get through because they have precedence. So you got people sitting on the Amtrak train, sitting there doing nothing, waiting for the commercial train to get out of the way. So expand the railways, and then, you've got, build some of these light rail systems like they were talking about out in California and so forth, where you have these bullet trains that that travel rather quickly, and you can automate those. I think it would be a lot safer to do that because you're in a particular you're not on the highway with other cars, is what I'm saying. You're in an isolated environment where you are the only thing on the railway. And if you've got them, on each side, one going one way, the other going the other way, it's not like they're going to crash into each other, right? So the only thing that would be an issue would be if there were one further up that were stopped. Well, when you stop, you go off the main track onto a side rail anyway to pull up to the station. So again, no problem.
I would also like to note that Uber did stop its, self-driving car program.
Why did they do that?
I can't remember why. I know they did it.
Must have been some kind of accident.
Speaking of accidents, that's all it will really take. I mean, you have one accident with a self-driving car or a self-driving truck, people are going to automatically go, oh, it was the self-driving vehicle that caused the accident.
Yep, this is what Jimmy Dore's been saying too. If one of these self-driving trucks hits a school bus, just one, it'll be all over the news. People will be up in arms, and the entire thing will be done away with.
Yep. Plus, then there are obviously ethical concerns to deal with. You know, the whole... Oh, what was the ethical concern? Like, you know, you lose control of your car. All right. You know, I'm trying to actually remember what it was.
What is Kareem?
I don't fucking know.
Our guest says Uber just bought Kareem. And then he says, Lyft just made its IPO. Good time to invest. No. And yes, we do have to care about spending, and we don't. The thing is, as long as we have the resources to back up the spending, that's fine. But yeah, we could do both, wars for profit and infrastructure, but what would be the point of the wars for profit except to make the already insanely wealthy even wealthier? What do they need with more money? Most of them, you got people who own islands off the coast of Honduras. That guy that
it's a scoreboard. Moving on.
Energy Transfer Partners that built the DAPL pipeline, he owns an island off the coast of Honduras. Does he need more money?
It's a scoreboard.
Fuck them.
Moving on. What was I saying about the ethical concerns? Yeah, it's like, all right, you're going to hit... I'm trying to remember the actual scenario. Like, let's say you're going down, right? I mean, you're driving on your car. Light turns red, you immediately hit the brake. Okay, what? And you see a person crossing the street, and you see a crowd of people. You know you're going to hit one. Which one do you hit?
Mm-hmm.
Do you hit the person crossing the street, or do you hit the crowd of people?
That's that railway fork dilemma.
Yep. And you are going to have to program this into self-driving cars.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about morality, aren't we? How do you program morality?
Ethics. Or T-Bomb out in the audience says, Kareem is the Middle East version of Uber. They bought it for $3.1 billion.
Jesus.
I've never heard of Kareem before, but I guess it's because I'm not in the Middle East, huh?
Yeah, you're basically going to have to program ethics and morality into these things. And that's pretty damn hard.
Especially since you're going to have to give them... the deal with an AI and ethics is that it's going to be extremely complicated to do more than give them a legalistic ethic, which is this act and that act. This act is good, that act is bad. But what about context? What about consequences? What about intention? You can't program that into the AI. You maybe can do a little bit of consequentialism as you're talking about, do you choose the greater good for the greater number, the least harm for the least number? That would be consequentialism, but that still doesn't take into account context and intention.
Mm-hmm. Plus, if you say, well, we'll still have the driver and the steering wheel there for safety purposes, but it's like, okay, the point of self-driving cars is to eliminate the driver to make the driving experience safer. What's the point of having a driver then?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point. Unless, in a situation like that, the the automatic driving system or whatever we're calling it, it's going to flip off, and it's going to be, all right, human, you make the decision. Derp.
Yeah, so...
At which point, you're going to be yelling at the car and the person who programmed it, or rather the company, because they got you into this situation, and now you're taking the blame.
T-Bomb, you don't understand coding at all, do you? If X, then Y. That's part of symbolic logic, and that is the basis of computer languages. So if you have a situation in which there are a group of people standing on the corner and one person crossing the street, then, and so it's not just start and stop and go. You can program other contingencies into the automobile. The problem, as I said, is that the vast majority of what you're going to be programming in will be about action only. This act, that act. And you can maybe do a little bit of consequentialism. As I said, you can choose to hit the one person instead of the group of people, thereby causing less harm to a smaller number of people, or more harm to a smaller number of people, whatever. But that's not a very... there are a number of issues with consequentialism, which I've discussed in another video. So, go check out my video about ethics, morals, and scruples.
The American Mall. Many a teenager spent their time. Speaking of, the American Mall Act. Yeah! Malls have been used as a hub for socialization, commerce in many American communities. And then Walmart happened. And then Amazon happened.
Mm-hmm.
They were where families could go shopping for school supplies before grabbing dinner and catching a movie. Teens would have their first jobs working retail and spend their Friday nights with friends. A local mall was an economic boon. As e-commerce largely takes over larger shares of the retail market, many malls are closing down. 300 malls will close in the next 4 years, and hundreds more will struggle. The windows shuttered, the doors locked, the building abandoned. This sends a negative signal to the economy that the area. It sends a negative signal that the economy of the area is suffering. It also attracts criminal elements who can squat in and vandalize these empty buildings without much interest from local law enforcement. These giant spaces need to be revitalized in order to spur investment in the local economy and combat the sub/urban blight associated with the closing of the mall. Honestly, it just sounds like he spent a lot of time at the mall when he was a teenager, is getting nostalgic for it.
Hey, I like malls
wants
too.
To relive that nostalgia.
I like malls too, but things change. Time marches on, as they say.
It just reeks of nostalgia. But the fact is, this is capitalism. Again, you either adapt or you die. You either live or you either live and you thrive, or you struggle and you die. And this is basically the American government propping up a dying place.
Well, they're propping up right now groups like corporations like Amazon. For example, Amazon paid nothing in taxes last year, and they got, I think it was $126 million tax refund. So, what the fuck? Making money hand over fist and not paying any taxes, but getting a tax refund.
And the mall's closing is part of the American... I would say American mindset, but I'll just say American mindset. I don't know about the rest of the Western world, but I know here in America, every time we have a choice between some more expensive but support your local businesses, or cheaper and mega corporation, we're going to go with the cheaper we're going to go cheap every single time. This is how Walmart got started.
Mm-hmm.
This is how they're able to hollow out so many communities. I mean, and malls are freaking expensive. Malls are expensive to maintain.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a mall right next to there. Yeah, it's an outdoor. The outdoor mall is doing just fine, but the indoor part, it sucks. A good chunk of it's empty. Yeah, I'd like to see it revived, but what you gonna do?
That is the question. And there's no easy answer. I mean, you can let it die, or you can try to prop it up. But you know, the people that run the stores in the malls could be more competitive too. One of the problems with Walmart, for example, is they have an item which sells well, and they sell out of their stock and they don't ever get it back. So the people who are interested in that item, they're going in there asking where it is, trying to get the store to order it from the warehouse or whatever. And the people that work there are telling them, we don't get to do that. The warehouse sends us what they want to send us. This is not good business practice at all. How does this even make sense? It's not a logical method of doing anything.
Like goals, find new uses for closed malls. Yeah, I can agree to that, but I don't want to prop them up. Let's see. As president, I will sponsor the American, securing $6 billion in funds to help fund struggling malls, attract businesses, schools, organizations, and entrepreneurs. New uses for buildings and commercial spaces. I don't know what the schools will do. Plus, some malls, like, there's another mall right next to me. I mean, I used to go there all the time as a kid. I stopped going for over a decade. I went back just to see how it was doing. Oh my god, it's doing... Not only is it doing better, but it's catering to the yuppie crowd.
Yeah, they have all these. I mean,
literally, I was going through like one of the mall entrances. First thing I see, jewelry store.
Mm-hmm.
Thing I see right next to it, what's going up? Another jewelry store.
And high-end dining establishments.
Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, this is the crowd you want. So yeah.
But I mean, you know, I do still go to the mall. I mean, I go to Hot Topic. There's this huge shoe store which has all kinds of nifty shoes and boots, and you know me. So I have to have my footwear.
Mm-hmm. And I'm more than willing to bet that most of these malls that are struggling are the ones that have less jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Which, going back to his, which combine this with his, make it easier for Americans to move for work. You're going to be pissing money down a hole. Why would I want to stay in a place that's dead when I can simply move? Oh, and by the way, we're going to be propping up these malls with the $6 billion in these economically depressed areas, which no one wants to go to. So you're basically spending money all over the place.
And so we have about 10, maybe 15 minutes left of the original video stream. And since this is already pretty close to 50 minutes, I'm going to cut it off here, and then there will be a part 4, which will conclude the original stream that I did with my boyfriend, and I will append to that my own discussion of one further policy of Andrew Yang's policies, which is actually a rather important one. I'm surprised that we skipped over it, but it is something that needs to be talked about. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. Ring the bell icon to be notified of all new content, at least theoretically. Make sure that you are still subscribed, because sometimes, for unknown reasons, YouTube does unsubscribe you. Let's see. Oh, please also consider sharing on your social media. If you really like what I do here, I do have a Patreon. Please consider becoming my patron through Patreon. The link will be found in the video description. I have a Discord that's also linked in the video description for my subscribers and patrons and so forth. Until next time, have fun but stay safe. For Republic News, this is Liviana signing off.